Capital Record, where we defend free enterprise and capital markets because we believe in the dignity of the human person. Well, hello and welcome to David Bonson's Capital Record, brought to you by National Review, where today I'm going to do something that I haven't done in a little while in the Capital Record, and it was actually a big part of what we originally envisioned when we launched Capital Record years ago. Many of you may recall that for years, the format of Capital Record was me interviewing another guest and us having a discussion together on some particular topic, often philosophical, theological, economic, the various subjects and topics that are at the core of what this podcast is about. One of the intended categories of guests we wanted to have were business leaders, and we thought it would help prompt discussions that were relevant to this very subject of defending free enterprise, capital markets, and the broader issues and the principles that go therewith that are at the core of Capital Record. We ended up having some wonderful business leader guests over the years. But now in this new format that we've been doing in 2025 that are shorter podcasts, topical, and a little more commentary driven and less guest oriented, we haven't had the opportunity to do that. And yet there are various things that will come up from other business leaders, sometimes titans of business, very well-known people, public profile, that I think serve up an opportunity, inspire the material that might drive really interesting discussion. That's what we're dealing with here today. I would love to have Barry Diller as a guest on Capital Record, but I do not believe I could get Barry to return my phone calls. For those who don't know, Barry Diller's story is quite fascinating, and he is one of the most famous names in Hollywood history. He is 83, maybe 84 years old now, but his autobiography just came out a few weeks ago, published by Simon Schuster. The name of the book is Who Knew? And I read it cover to cover and got a lot out of it. And that's interesting in its own right, because Barry is not necessarily my people. What I mean by that is Barry is not an economist. He's not theologically minded. He's not center right politically. But Barry is one of the most outstanding Hollywood executives in history. And Barry is one of the pioneers of monetizing the internet in a new media age. Any student of business and entrepreneurialism and technology over the last, certainly 25 years with those examples, but for decades before that as well, should be interested in the story of Barry Diller. I do consider myself a student of modern business history and can be a little bit obsessive about it. And so I got Barry's book right when it came out, read it entirely, and there are some things I want to share about it. But it may be that so far I haven't really explained why this is relevant to me, why Barry's story in particular is interesting. I mean, I do love movies like the next guy, but I'm not obsessed with movies. There's an interest in Hollywood, in media, but I wouldn't say it's a particular hobby horse for me. Barry's story is actually more interesting to me for biographical reasons, in that Barry never went to college. Barry was hired as a mailroom guy at the William Morris Agency. And Barry parlayed being a mailroom guy at William Morris to being kind of more senior assistant, but still administrative role at William Morris, to a executive assistant role at ABC, to becoming the pioneer behind basically made for television movies at ABC, which he then had a roughly 10-year career as an incredibly successful executive at ABC, that then became roughly 10-year incredibly successful career as the CEO of Paramount, where he built it and restored it as to one of the leading studios in Hollywood. and then left Paramount to become the CEO of 20th Century Fox. Ultimately, Rupert Murdoch, early in that experience, becoming the majority owner, and Barry being the brain behind the operation that built the Fox TV network. And then so kind of three different careers, about a decade apiece, from ABC to Paramount to Fox, but just trailblazing stuff accomplished in each, all out of a, a beginning in the entertainment industry as a mailroom guy at the William Morris Agency. I don't, I mean, if you're not interested in that journey, if you don't find that career trajectory fascinating, then the entire study of entrepreneurialism and markets and enterprise may not be for you. Um, I think what Barry then did after three stints as an employee, now granted, a very empowered and compensated employee, but nevertheless a W 2 employee at various companies, to then leave Fox and go on into a more entrepreneurial realm where he drove the success of QVC, nearly reacquired Paramount under the QVC operation, ultimately acquired Home Shopping Network, took a large piece of the USA Network, built Expedia, and a whole number of other internet properties you'd be familiar with, Tinder being one, the Vimeo, and which is really kind of a leading internet video technology app. Um, and actually to this day owns the conglomerate that owns People magazine. So this is a life well lived in the sense of what he has vocationally and professionally accomplished. Now he's a center left guy politically. There are certain things he has done that are kind of anti woke in this moment, but no, he is not cut from the same cloth I am politically. And then I guess just because I don't want to get emails from people informing me about something that I promise you I'm already well aware of, it is also true that his personal life is a bit of an enigma. To my knowledge, he had never come out as gay prior to this book that just came out a year ago, and he's been married to a woman, is still married to her to this day, a very famous fashion executive, who has a couple of children of her own, and that Barry's very involved with. He's not the father of the kids, but he's been with her for decades. So I'm pretty sure, from what I understand, that it was maybe known in certain pockets of Hollywood, but was not something that had ever been publicly discussed or outed by Barry, that he was gay. And so he talks in the book quite a bit about his gay lifestyle as a teenager into his 20s and whatnot. And again, I don't really understand it. It's kind of very confusing, but that stuff's out there, and suffice it to say, it's a little outside of my interest, or, or even comfort level. What is going on there with his own sexual identity? But let's just say this: Barry Diller is an incredibly interesting American business success story, and Capitol Record ought to look for those things we could learn in our quest for the promotion of a free society. The various elements out of business, out of entrepreneurialism, out of enterprise, that are translatable into things that I ought to talk about in the podcast. And so there's a couple of things that I highlighted. I put a link in the show notes to a little longer piece I did up, some of the key takeaways. Putting, yeah, out of a 330-page book, then maybe 5 pages that talked about some of his personal lifestyle stuff. He put some of that away, and actually, there's probably even less than that about his own politics. I mean, other than that, I think he was a bundler for the Bill Clinton campaign back in 1992. But he acknowledges being a center left guy. He has plenty of friends on the right. Rupert Murdoch was one who he maintained a cordial relationship with, who was vital to Barry's own success. But then he also was, an early employer of Jeffrey Katzenberg, who became a very well-known left-wing guy. So, I mean, he's got friends on all sides of it, as you could expect someone of his stature would. But there isn't much on the political in the book as well. to me, it's his own story. And then there's just certain takeaways that I think are relevant to those of us interested in business and the business of business, which I myself am very interested in. There are really successful business folks out there that could write a memoir with their own take on business, that they could be wrong on everything. The fact that they were successful at something doesn't always translate to those things having been evergreen principles. Often people were successful for very different reasons than the cogency of their own business philosophy. Oftentimes, they're not even telling you their real business philosophy. They're retroactively making one up that pens well now, but doesn't necessarily replicate or capture what their real life business journey may have been years earlier. But in Barry's case, there were a few things I want to read and comment on quickly in today's Capitol record. Um, there's this idea that there's a tension between people who do things by their gut, that are really feeling oriented, emotionally oriented, and then there's people that are really quite academic and quite rigid with data and science and how they analyze things. And so business schools will deeply investigate what is the preferred approach. And people will often say that Donald Trump was the guy who just did things from his gut. And then Michael Bloomberg famously says, "In God we trust, and all others bring data," that he was a purely analytical guy. I have never met a from the gut businessman I respected who didn't also do some homework. And I have never met a data driven person who didn't, to some degree, rely on their own instincts. But Diller certainly favors strong conviction around instinct, around trusting your beliefs. But he caveats it in a way that I find very fascinating. Quoting here verbatim, I had one philosophy about new ventures. If you like the idea, get on with it. Don't overanalyze it. Don't waste time making decks and projections where it's absolutely certain, absolutely, that they will be wrong, high or low. Don't do anything other than shake the idea back and forth until you resolve that the only known is it's a good idea. And then you can just get on with it. Make mistakes and correct them as fast as you can, and eventually there will be fewer mistakes. This is the way non-geniuses succeed. I don't see things clearly in the beginning. I can't see around corners. It's the process I prize. The rocky road from idea to implementation. The consternation and thrill of pulling it through to success is the most gratifying work. He also says, in a similar vein, why do you pay attention to these research people? Why do you accept their prognostications as if they're science? It would be better if they came in wearing headdresses and bones around their necks, because they're just witch doctors who give you false security over a process that is definitionally insecure. And then finally, rather than using instinct, they were trying to predict the public appetite, which I said then and say now over and over again simply isn't possible. Neither is using research to help make decisions. No amount of research on ideas is worth the paper it's printed on. Data can tell you what has happened, but not what will happen. Data is often harmful to instinct. I believe this to be true for making not only creative decisions, but many business decisions. Skipping to the end there, what is at the essence of any proposal? Is it a good idea? And does it make any common sense? This general theme is something I think is incredibly important. He is not commenting on data as if it is unhelpful. He is commenting on data as a descriptor of what it is, something that describes for you backward-looking reality, and acknowledging that human beings have to make forward-looking assessments. You can use backward-looking data to inform your forward-looking assessment, but you can't escape the fact that data and research do not tell you what to do. In a lot of ways, without Barry, I think, being ideologically self-conscious about this, this is an incredibly Austrian idea, the human action of economics. There is risk in it, and Barry acknowledges that by saying, if you end up making a mistake, fix it as quickly as you can. There will then be fewer mistakes. It's a sort of anti-fragility. You You benefit from learning from mistakes, but correct them as fast as you can. What you can't do is believe that there is some aversion to risk taking or that there is some elimination of mistakes possible. So I think that there is a real human understanding in the way Barry thinks about this that is quite profound and I think very useful. Um, Another issue that he brought up, he's talking about Martin Davis, who became the head of Gulf and Western, which owned Paramount when Charles Bluedorn died. And he describes him as an incredibly, I want to quote this verbatim, an incredibly effective conniver. He had no ability to actually manage and grow the unbelievably complex business he was now in charge of. He was very proficient in public relations, very savvy and up from the streets, devious scheming. He wasn't capable of devising any go forward strategy. This can sound like he's dissing on a former employer, but in reality, he's describing something that is all too common that gets to the virtuous part of my defense of a given vision of free and virtuous society. We are filled with people in corporate America who are good at being devious, but are not, in fact, real operators. This is not merely a comment on a flaw in business strategy when operations takes a back seat to kind of perfecting the craft of manipulating people. It speaks to a lack of virtue. Um, the what we would often say about the types of people he's describing here, that they're proficient at public relations, they're devious schemers, they're BS artists. And the world's full of them. All professions are full of them. And even top corporate executives are not immune from this. But the remedy here is, first of all, business and market forces generally find these people out. But our own promotion of a free and virtuous society is the remedy, because not only do we want, from market outcome perspective, people to be actually strategic operational talents, but the virtue that is reinforced in one being a straight shooter, having competence, not merely knowing the art of corporate skullduggery, I think is a very profound point, but also one that is missed in too many assessments, particularly academic ones, of the reality of American business. Folks take for granted that people got to where they are because of business talent. And I think Barry's highlighting something that all of us who have been around long enough know. Many got where they are, not from genuine operational or strategic ability, but from the ability to more effectively knife others. And I appreciated Barry calling it out here the way he did. Let's talk. Let's see. I'm going to skip ahead a couple other things. I mean, again, I really want you to go to the article in the show notes that is posted at Bahnsen.com. What you truly need to succeed in business are instincts and willfulness. It's that alchemy that makes for a significant career. Having specific goals on that path forward are often detriments. Better to just take opportunities wherever they come and not overplot. Separately, opportunity came from the unintended consequences of disconnected situations that reconnected in serendipitous ways, as if some cosmic hand had been at work. Does this sound a little bit to you like Hayekian spontaneous order? This is something I will never understand for the life of me. Why more people do not understand the benefit to just being present, to being engaged, to suiting up and showing up. This is a huge part of how business success develops. Being present and being exposed to doors that open so you can walk through them. The things that do end up proving in hindsight to have been connected do not visibly seem connected at the time. But a multi-decade career like Barry's speaks to how these things do, in fact, over time come together. And it's a tremendous part of practical and applied economics that we understand the spontaneous order of a market-based system, but our responsibility in that to learn, to absorb, to be flexible, and to move human action. Finally, like almost everything in my life, iteration, one dumb step in front of the other. Course correcting as you go is the only process I am any good at. I'm best building things from scratch. I've learned I'm not a very good shepherd of things already built. I don't add much value to ongoing successful businesses, and I wish I were a better manager who had training in dealing directly and effectively with the 30,000 employees under our tents. But I think I was most impressive when I built up from just an idea, where I was the first employee and made every decision. I feel so much more able assembling all the pieces where I can touch each of them directly. This again speaks to the human element of economics. I am a big believer in capital markets. In fact, I started a podcast to defend capital markets. I am therefore a big believer at M&A. Now, M&A is not merely a capital transaction. It involves human beings and the optimization of human capital. Mergers and acquisitions are important, but Barry's speaking to an entrepreneurial reality here. I happen to believe it describes my own giftedness in business and my own weaknesses in business, but he's describing himself in it. And by no means does anyone believe it applies to all people. Some are great at fixing something. Some are great at taking something that's already big and making it bigger. Others, Barry is describing himself this way, I believe this to be true of myself, are better building something from the ground up and not as good inheriting somebody else's culture, someone else's invention. In other words, sometimes we're better off marrying who we date as opposed to marrying somebody else's girlfriend. Now, that's a metaphor here because it's kind of obviously true, literally, but metaphorically, I hope you understand the point I'm making. There is a reality of human action economics that is missed so often, and a success story like Barry Diller's reinforces it. There's some great takeaways in the book. There's some stuff some of you wouldn't like. I get all that. But check out my longer piece at bahnsen.com if you're interested in hearing more. And thank you for bearing with me as I walk through some of the takeaways from Barry Diller's new book, Who Knew? Look forward to coming at you again here this week with another episode of David Bahnsen's Capital Record. Thanks for listening.